Heyo, John Lee Dumas here of Entrepreneur on Fire, the #1 business podcast, and you are listening to the How to Quit Working show by Jeff Steinman, where you'll hear insights, stories, and inspiration from successful entrepreneurs who quit their job and started a business. Prepare to ignite.
If you want to start a business for yourself, I would say instead of looking for ways to make money, look for things that you really enjoy doing, make a huge list, and then figure out how you can monetize that instead of just figuring out ways to get cash in the door. Because I know a lot of people that are fairly successful and they're doing things they hate doing, and they're doing it because they went, okay, I need to figure out how to pay off all this debt or pay my way through school. So they started a business managing properties or something, and sure, they're doing okay. They're paying for what they need to pay for, but they hate it, and it's boring.
This is the How to Quit Working show. Jeff Steinman believes entrepreneurship is the only true path to freedom. That's why he created the How to Quit Working show, where you'll hear stories, insights, and inspiration from lifestyle fanatics who left their soul-sucking 9-to-5 job forever. Now, here's your host, author, entrepreneur, and ultimate lifestyle fanatic, Jeff Steinman.
Hello and welcome to the How to Quit Working show. Today we're going to talk to Jordan Harbinger. Jordan has built The Art of Charm, which is an amazing business and platform sort of built around his podcast. And he helps guys gain their self-confidence and be able to be more successful and more confident in their lives. And I love what Jordan's doing. And I got to be perfectly honest, this is not a brand new interview. This is actually a replay of an interview that I did with Jordan about, I think it was well over a year ago. And, you know, one of the cool things about doing this show for as long as I've been doing it, or really sticking with anything for a long time, is that you get to this point where you have this sort of like momentum and you have these things that you can capitalize on. And to be perfectly honest about the reason that I'm replaying this today is that I've been kind of under the weather for the past few days. You know, if you're out in the circle, you may have noticed I haven't been as active as I normally have. I just kind of got a cold or a flu or something that was really, really rough. But I pushed through it, and I'm feeling better now. But it also left me in a situation where it was Wednesday, time for the show, with no real new content. But the great thing about having this great library is that I can replay stuff like this, and I only replay the stuff that I think is really, really epic and that you'll get a lot out of. And the other thing that I kind of love replaying these episodes because, gosh, a year, 14 months ago, whenever we did this interview, there weren't that many people that listened to the How to Quit Working show. You know, so a lot of folks haven't heard this, and there's just a ton of great content out there, and I'm glad to be able to bring that back to you. If you haven't already, go over to the How to Quit Working circle, and that is at howtoquitworking.com/group. Jump over into the How to Quit Working group on Facebook and join in the conversation. Let's keep talking about this stuff. We have great conversation out there, and I can't wait to see you over there. So go to howtoquitworking.com/group, and now listen to Jordan Harbinger talk about the amazing things that he's done with The Art of Charm and how he took his basically losing the security of his corporate job and turned it into something that is way, way more amazing, and how he just looked at life in a whole different way. This is great. Enjoy this interview with Jordan. Jordan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's a blast. So I'm excited to hear your story because it sounds like you were on Wall Street. You were working the grind on Wall Street in that high pressure cooker job. I worked for a brokerage firm, so I understand kind of what that's like. And you said, you know, to hell with that. You're going to do something that you really enjoy and you really care about.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, it's fun. I'm literally creating a presentation right now about how I did just that for a group of kind of, I hate to use the term wannabe entrepreneurs because it sounds condescending, but what I really mean is people who want to do the same thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of folks out there who really who want to do that, and that's why I love talking to people like you who've done this for themselves. So tell me, what was going on when you were working on Wall Street? What was going on? What made you start to think, yeah, maybe this isn't the way I want to live the rest of my life?
Well, it's kind of funny because, you know, it was just one of those things that happened by accident. First of all, when I went to law school, and I know there's people out there who are professionals that can attest to feeling the same way. When I went to law school, I thought, I'm going to law school because I got nothing else to do. I don't know what I'm going to do to get a job. And I don't really have a career in mind. And of course, and not to blame other people for those issues, but career counselors, in air quotes, at the University of Michigan, where I went to school, were kind of like, well, they were not that great at finding something that seemed even remotely promising. And you remember that test you took when you were a kid? I don't know if you did this, actually.
Yes.
When I was a kid, I took a test, and it was like, you know already where I'm going with this already.
Yeah,
right?
I remember my results.
Yeah, and it was like, you're going to be good at a machine metal stamping job. And I was like, what?
Like, what test, what do they measure that tells them that?
Yeah, and I'm thinking, oh, great, I have a future in machine metal stamping. Now, if you're a machine metal stamper and you're listening to this, I'm not picking on you. But, I just thought to myself, I just built a radio transmitter in my garage or my basement. I'm 13 years old. Machine metal stamping sounds really dumb, but there's 87, 97 other results on this page that, do you like stamping metal? Yes. Sure. Well, you should be a machine metal stamper. I'm thinking whoever invented this just needs to get beaten with reeds, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking, okay, that's useless. And so that kind of persisted in high school. What do you want to be when you grow up? I don't know. Okay, anthropology. I'm taking German class, and all you know is kind of what your parents or your friends' parents did. And I'm like, well, I don't want to be an automotive engineer like my dad, and I don't really want to be a school teacher like my mom. I don't really think I'm good at school anyway, even though I'm a good student. I'm just doing it because I have to. So, okay, college, and then you're in college and you do the same stuff, and then basically grad school opportunities roll around, or college graduation rolls around, and this was a huge wake-up call for me. I go to get a job at Best Buy, which I think is probably a national chain. But if you're overseas and you're listening to this, it's basically a store where you can go buy, at the time, CDs, computers, radios, phones, things like that. It's pretty much the same now, only minus probably the DVDs and CDs. And they went through and I made it to like the final round of interviews and came in for another interview. And they were like, okay, well, you can get a job here, and it's going to pay like $8.95 an hour or something. And I was like, this really stinks. I don't want to do this. It seems awful. And I graduated from the University of Michigan. I speak 2 languages fluently besides English, and I'm working at Best Buy if I'm lucky. So my friends were like, dude, you're smarter than that. You should go to grad school. And I thought, oh, okay, I never really thought about it. So I applied to law school, and I happened to get into Michigan, which is a decent law school. Okay. And so I'm like, okay, cool, I'll go to Michigan for law, and I have my girlfriend there, so now I don't have to leave my girlfriend. Yay, right? So like $120,000 in graduate school tuition. Later, I graduate from law school. I end up with a job on Wall Street, pass the New York bar exam, and I'm thinking, I never wanted this.
Yeah. Well, do you think that like the high salary that lawyers make did that play into the decision to go to law school?
Yeah. I mean, to go? No. But once I got into law school, people were like, dude, you're set if you do well.
I gotcha. Okay.
Job out of college was going to be like $150,000. Yeah. And it was. That was cool, right? I was like, this is really neat.
Yeah.
I mean, that's awesome. Like, who doesn't like a little or a lot of money?
Yeah, and that was like a starting salary.
Yeah, dude, that was my starting salary.
Yeah, you had a long ways to go.
It was like, you're going to start at this ridiculous amount, and you're going to graduate to the following 10 ridiculous amounts until you make partner, and then you're going to make that ridiculous amount forever. Yeah. And then you're going to retire. And it's like, from there, I mean, you know what I mean? It's just like a really sweet deal, provided that you value your time at like zero.
It's the corporate team.
It is. And on Wall Street, we have a motto, or a saying, or a term, I guess, called the golden handcuffs.
Yeah.
And you probably talked about this on your show, so I won't bore everybody with it too much, but it's basically the idea that you go get a job like that, and then you're like, well, cool, I got to buy a really badass condo or apartment because I got a killer job and I live in Manhattan.
Yeah.
So you buy this condo, but man, why live like a normal person when you're rich and you're only getting richer? So you buy this really nice condo, and then you're like, well, I'm going to get married, and I'm going to marry a girl who's probably going to cost me a lot of money because we're all after the trophy wife.
Yeah.
And, not everybody did that. Granted, like, a lot of people were sensible and married girls that were nice people, but, some people didn't do that. And then they went, well, you know what? I got to get out of the city sometimes. And then your buddy that you work with goes, well, just buy a house in the Hamptons. That's where I summer. And you go, okay. So then you buy a summer home and you're like, well, man, outgoing expenses that are like, in the 5-figure range, but screw it. I'm loaded, I'm loaded. My IRA is packed out nice. I'm doing pretty well for myself. I really enjoy, all the money I have. But man, I wish I just had more time to spend it. And then you kind of realize that you haven't spent a whole lot of time with your wife. You haven't spent a whole lot of time with your kids because you're working like 10 to 12 hours a day, 6-7 days a week, and it stinks. But you can't quit because you have a condo. And you have a house in the Hamptons, and you have a family to support. So now you're stuck.
Yeah.
And then you go, well, if I'm going to be stuck somewhere, I might as well be stuck somewhere where I'm making 6 figures and then maybe 7 when I'm 45. The problem is that 15, 20-year expanse in there, or even 10 if you're lucky, that's a long time, and it's probably the best years of your life.
Yeah.
So when you're in there grinding away, you're kind of wasting that. And, a lot of people that I know who are attorneys are doing cool stuff. A lot of people that I was really good friends with in law school, I don't even have time to talk to them anymore. I should say they don't have time to talk to me anymore. And I often wonder, I'm like, are these people doing anything? And whenever I see them on Facebook and I say, hey, happy birthday, what are you doing? They're like, you're so lucky you made it out. I'm jealous. You're so lucky. They never go, oh, man, things are awesome. I just had a baby. I'm loving life. I'm living the dream. They either don't answer because they're never on Facebook because they're way too busy, or they go, man, this sucks. I just don't know if I have any other options.
Well, so why did you escape that, but they can't?
It's interesting, and it goes back, and I think about this question a lot, and it goes back a lot to, unfortunately, there's a couple of like large, complicated answers, so I'm happy to dive into all of them.
Go for it. That's what this show's about.
Good. Okay. Cool. When I was younger, in college, even in high school, I worked at a movie theater, and I thought, we do things so stupidly here. There are a lot better processes. And then the owner explained to me, well, we do things here for a reason, and this is the best way to do it. And, we've thought well and hard about how to get this done. And I go, okay, fine. So
That's the manager accent.
That is the manager accent. That's the condescending owner of a movie theater that has never worked in his own movie ever. Yeah. He just goes and counts the money at the end of the day and is like, I'm so good at business, And you're thinking, okay, Mister, I've operated at a loss for the last 5 years, even though my dad paid for this whole thing out of pocket and cash. So, I remember telling my manager once, when I mop this hallway and I do this and then I go downstairs, I'm actually losing a lot of time. And then there's a lot of momentum lost at the concession stand because we're doing the switch at this time. You ever think maybe to just like do it this way? And he goes, that's a really good idea. I didn't even notice that. Because I've been upstairs. And I'm thinking, if the manager didn't notice that, the owner doesn't even know that this might have been a problem because he doesn't know how this place operates.
Yeah.
So I thought to myself, not really cut out to be an employee at a place like this. So they moved me up to team leader. Of course, I quit. It was a movie theater. I was 17 years old. But throughout college and things like that, I had a lot of different little jobs, and I was always hustling. I was always making money on the side. And how do I make money to go to the bar but not do a ton of work and also make it fun?
Yeah.
How do I go travel for a whole year but also get credit for going to school for that year but also not pay out the nose for one of these stupid exchange programs, which means you're just drinking with Americans and going to McDonald's every day, in Spain or France. And so I did a lot of that stuff, and then I always dreaded, I'm like, one day I'm going to have to get a job and it's going to be terrible. One day I'm going to have to get a real job and I'm not going to be able to fit in. One day I'm going to get a real job and everyone's going to find out that I'm just a really good hustler, but I'm a shitty employee, a really terrible employee. And pardon my Latin, I don't know what your policy is on that.
You're cool.
And so, I got that job on Wall Street, and they're like, we like hustlers, we like people who go out and get business, Great. Okay, good. So that sort of works for me, but also at the end of the day, really I'm just checking for commas and documents. So I'm still thinking I'm going to be a bad employee. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And, I was doing mortgage-backed securities. And what those are, for people who are listening and don't really know, basically these big investment banks would come up with these mortgage products where they would take a bunch of mortgages and pack them together and then sell essentially like stock based on these pools of mortgages. There might be like 100,000 mortgages in a big pool. So the problem was a lot of those mortgages were what we'd called subprime mortgages. And now people are getting news flashbacks of what happened in 2007. So we would take these giant pools, imagine 100,000 subprime mortgages, and then imagine that 60% of those people can't afford to pay their mortgages anymore.
Yeah.
What happens is that the stocks that those securities are based on, in other words, that pool of mortgages goes from, oh my God, this thing's making like $1 million a day in revenue because of all the payments. They're going, oh, this thing's making like negative $1 million a day.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to buy it anymore. So everybody's selling their stock in that security, which means that the bank that holds it starts to have to pay to make up the loss, and they're losing their shirts. And that's sort of like financial crisis in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Right? So needless to say, when those mortgage pools went really bad, all the lawyers that created those mortgage pools did the paperwork for those, which is what I was doing. We didn't have a whole lot going on. Nobody was going, hey, the ship is sinking. Let's buy new furniture for the dining room, right?
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to do that. So they also didn't want to fire their first-year associates because that looks really, really bad for a law firm to do that. You can't lay off first-year associates because no one will ever want to work for you ever again, ever.
Yeah.
What they didn't realize was that the crisis was going to be so bad that it wouldn't matter anyway because everybody was going to go belly up in short order. But what they did instead was they paid me full salary and benefits for 9 months while I did nothing.
Oh, wow.
And that was awesome because that was basically like winning a mini lottery where they're like, hey, man, you want $80,000 in an office that you can do whatever the heck you want and go for it.
Wow.
And they were like, use this time to find another job. We'll help you out with job training and networking skills and classes and recruiters and all that stuff. We'll help you figure out all that stuff. And I went, cool, man. So I had an office, and my office mate, he just stopped showing up and like moved in with his girlfriend, didn't care anymore. And so I thought, this is actually a pretty killer deal. Now, while everyone else was freaking out and panicking, I was going, well, awesome. I didn't really want to be a lawyer anyway. I'm not really going to find another job. And I had started, and this is where the second leg of the story comes in, right?
Yeah.
So I have all this free time and a bunch of extra money, and I'm like, what am I going to do? Well, back in law school, I had started what's called a podcast, just a hobby show with a friend of mine that was about my dating life and how crappy it was at that time. And it wasn't just me ranting and whining. It was more like me going, okay, I went on a date and I did this, and this didn't work. So I went on a date and I did this, and she responded really well to that. And I read this book by this guy that said, here's how you do a first date. And I did that, and this stuff worked, but this other stuff didn't work. And then I would go, hey, this week I actually brought on the author of this book that I read, and he's going to tell me what I did wrong. And so I would tell him all about this, and I'd get coaching from this author. And then I would start talking about body language and how, I read this book on body language, and I met with a coach and learned about body language and did this and that. And so we started interviewing those coaches, and I would just try stuff out and come up with theories of our own, and then we would go out and test those. So we had a really good knowledge base of actual practical knowledge of how to go out there and network with people and go out there and meet with girls and go on successful dates. And bear in mind, we're like in our early 20s. This stuff was really cool for us. This is like perfectly apropos. This is about 8 to 10 years ago now, right? So we started this podcast, and it's right when podcasting was new. So we got pretty popular because people were just trying new podcasts, and there were probably like 400.
Sure.
Right?
Well, and you were providing a crap load of value. I mean, what single guy doesn't want that kind of advice? And like you said, there were so few podcasts out at the time.
Right, exactly. And then like this book came out called The Game by this author, Neil Strauss, and that was about sort of what we were doing, and it was really popular, so people were searching for it, and they found us, and they were like, oh, these guys are doing similar stuff, but it's more genuine. They're not lying. They're not making up stories. They're not dressing up funny. It's more of an authentic approach to becoming a more charismatic guy.
Awesome.
Charismatic man. And so people were spreading the word, and that was going crazy. And then one of my co-hosts on the show, his friend wrote a screenplay, and it got turned into a movie. It was called Hitch, and Will Smith was in it.
Oh, cool.
And it was kind of about what we were doing. So we were like, this is really cool. So people were searching for that, and they were finding us. So we had a really good sort of boom on our show then. And that show, we just kept doing it every week or every other week for a while. And I moved to New York to do my law job, to start my job at the firm. And we kept doing it, over Skype and things like that. And then we got picked up by Sirius XM satellite radio.
Cool.
And, we were guests on on another show. They thought it was a really interesting topic. So they gave us this Sirius XM satellite radio show for 3 years. And we were running that. They're still replaying this show, right? And so we kind of had some luck, but we were also using our networking skills to get ahead and get what we wanted. And that was really important. And that's sort of a crux of why we were able to do what we were able to do, why I was able to escape the cubicle prison. Well, I had a pretty nice office at the firm, but whatever. And because we were putting into practice what we were teaching here at the company that we eventually formed called The Art of Charm.
Okay.
And so the podcast became more popular. The Sirius XM show was still popular. And then I found myself laid off, right? This is where the stories converge. I found myself laid off from this law firm. Well, not laid off, still getting paid, but, them going, hey, next year, you're done, man. Yeah. As soon as you hit second year, you're finished. This is your last paycheck. These are your last, reimbursements, blah, 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 whatever. Yeah. And they said, do you need a loan of any kind of money before you leave? Because we know we're leaving you somewhat in the lurch. And I thought, not really in the lurch. I'm getting paid full salary and benefits. But if you guys are going to give me $10,000 just to go away and not complain, I'll take it. So I took that money too. And I went, hey guys, Art of Charm's doing okay, but I got like a lot of money here. Why don't we do something with it? So we started investing it in advertising. I mean, we wasted it. I'm not going to tell you that money did anything other than provide us an opportunity to lose a lot of it and go, oh man, that didn't work. So, but the fact is I had that hobby that was working for me. People were buying our products. People were paying for our boot camps. We have live programs where guys come to live at our training facility, which was in New York, is now in LA, where they live with us for a week. It's a dorm, it's a living area, right? They're not staying on my couch anymore like they were back then. But they stay here for a week. They learn from us a bunch of different criteria for charisma. We do a lot of drills. We do a lot of field work and practice. We teach them networking skills and things like that, as well as a lot of dating skills. And so we were doing that, for a while. And so that hobby business turned into my full-time gig because I wasn't afraid to kind of leap, knowing that at least the beginnings of a net were there. And I thought to myself, it's great that there's kind of a net here and that we're surviving barely on this other business that I've got. But also, it's not like I'm choosing between this amazingly rewarding career as an attorney and going, maybe I want to start my own thing. It was kind of like, either I'm going to find another job that I hate even more than this one in the legal field, and that's even more soul-sucking, or, I'm going to find something that I can do on my own that I actually enjoy. And I thought to myself, I never believed that was possible because my parents are kind of old school. They're very supportive, but they're old school, and they think, if you enjoy your job, you're probably doing something wrong. Or you're not doing stuff. And that's old school thinking, and it's totally correct for a lot of people, but I also believe since I'd had exposure to so many authors and independent businessmen and cool teachers that were teaching us what we were using at The Art of Charm, or the seeds thereof, I realized there are people out there that work for themselves, that do things that they like to do, and they don't spend 10 hours in the office, and they still make a good living off of that. And I also had to do some hard thinking, and I thought, okay, I live in this awesome building in Manhattan. I've got tons of cash. I don't even know how to spend it all. So sometimes I'm partying with my friends and just paying for everything. And I thought, I really don't care about any of this. I don't care. I'm 27. I'm making more than both my parents combined at the peak of their career, and it's my first year out of college. Yeah. I don't need all this money. I just don't. Okay. So I started investing it in my company and in retirement accounts and things like that. But I really, really didn't need it, and it was good. It was a good experience to have. And I know a lot of people out there going, boo frickin' who, homeboy's got too much money, must be tough. But, what it taught me was I don't need to stay in a career that I don't like so that I can buy a house that I don't need. Because as cliche as it sounds, when you don't need that stuff, it's so liberating because possessions, debt, all those things limit your options.
Yeah.
And that's the golden handcuffs. And Mark Cuban, a noted entrepreneur and owner of the Dallas Mavericks, he said something very, very interesting. I want to say on Twitter or Shark Tank or maybe at a talk he gave. I can't remember, but it definitely came out of his mouth. And it was that debt limits your options, right? And things like that, things like having that law job, that law career, and then buying that house, buying that car, buying that condo, that limits your options. Now I make approximately the same as I might have made on Wall Street had I stuck with it. But I'll tell you, I work a lot less. My stress level is a lot lower. And to be honest, maybe I won't ever, it's possible that I won't ever make millions of bucks. But I don't care because I know I'm not really missing anything.
Yeah. That's a really cool perspective. So I assume then you got rid of the house in the Hamptons and the apartment?
Well, I didn't really buy the house in the Hamptons, but people were recommending
I got you.
that I do that. Yeah, I didn't need that because I was still kind of green and new, and I was like, I don't need that. Let's not be ridiculous. But I got rid of the apartment, and it was fun to have it. But I've got a great place in LA too. But I mean, the thing is, like, that's because I worked my way back up there, and I don't need, like, people they'll get in my car. I drive a Ford Fusion, a black Ford Fusion. My dad worked for Ford. And yeah, they're great. They're fine. And people go, my clients will get in the car or something, and we'll be going out to dinner, and I'll drive a couple of people with me, and they'll go, hey, no offense, but and I mean no disrespect, but I thought you'd drive something a little higher end. And I go, really? Why? And they're like, well, because your business is successful, your place is nice, your clothes are nice, but you don't. I mean, why a Ford Fusion? You could obviously afford, something nicer. And I thought, it's because I don't care. And it's not a good investment because the only times I've ever thought, man, I'm not a car guy, as you can tell. The only times I've ever thought, man, I should get a nicer car is when I thought, man, everybody in LA has a great car. And then I thought, but I don't really care. I don't want to be like these people. Yeah. Or, man, my friend's got a really nice pool at his apartment. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to make a note to ask him if I can use his pool. So I go, hey, man, can I use your pool? He goes, anytime you want to use my pool, you call me. And I go, great. Now I've basically got my own pool. How many times did I call him to use his pool? 0. I think maybe one time I had some friends in from another country, and they're like, oh, where can we swim? And I was like, I got a place, right? Yeah. But I didn't need the pool, and I thought, if I had this pool in my yard, I would never use it. Yeah. I would literally never use it. And then I was like, man, I'm having trouble getting to the gym. Well, this building has a gym. I'm going to get this building that has a gym. So I got a building that had a gym. I never went to the gym in the building because it stunk. Okay. And I was like, you know what? I don't need that. And so I got a trainer, and I go to that gym instead. And I thought, okay, so I don't need all these nice things. And so you think about what you need versus what you want versus what you think you want, and they're very 3 distinct separate columns. Yeah. And what's good about it, what's very pleasant about it is when you go, here's what I need: food, water, shelter, love from a good woman or whatever, and friends. You're like, okay, that's what I really need. That's what I've been surviving on. That's what I love. What do I want? Well, I want a Maserati, and I want this and that and the other thing. Go rent a Maserati for a day. You'll love it. Rent a Maserati for a week. You'll be like, it's just another car now. I'm sorry. Unless you're a car guy, you don't care. You won't care. Just stop caring. Yeah. And if you think, man, I wish I lived in a place like this when you're on vacation, then I'd say figure out a way to work remotely for like 2 weeks. By the end of those 2 weeks, you're not even going to care. You're going to be working in your home office, overlooking the ocean, going, yeah, my view's great. Anyway, I got a ton of email to catch up on, and I got to make some phone calls. You're not going to care. You don't need that stuff. And people convinced they do. It's the old grass is greener on the other side type of thing, and that's fine. But once you have a taste, you just realize you don't care. And you can go back. You can scale back, which is good because it can be tough. But once you realize what you do need, what you think you need, and what you think you want are different, then you're going to have a much easier time affording it because you really don't need as much as as you think, and you can afford the basics quite easily. You don't need to make $250,000 a year to have a good lifestyle. You might be chained to your desk now because you overpurchased, but get rid of that crap. You don't use it. Your wife's probably not really going to care, especially if she knows how miserable it's making you having to stay in the job you hate just to pay for it. She's not going to care about that summer home. And if she values that summer home over your happiness, then maybe you should reevaluate your relationship too.
Yeah, sure. Well, you're definitely really, you've really kind of given up the thought that you need to have certain things in order to be happy. But my question for you would be, was there a time after you gave up that nice apartment in Manhattan and kind of some of that luxury that you were kind of bummed out, that you kind of missed it?
Did I ever miss some of the stuff from my old apartment and stuff? Yeah. You mean my old lifestyle? Not really. Not really. I had a really awesome place, man. Mm-hmm. It was great. And when I came here to LA, I got a good place with a good location, but not nearly as many bells and whistles. Okay. And I never really missed it. And I kind of thought to myself, I kind of rationalized it like this: I'm starting up a company. I'm not supposed to be living in the lap of luxury,
sure,
right? And now that I'm doing a little bit better, before I make major buys and purchases, I always kind of think about, where's this impulse coming from? And a lot of times, especially in LA and New York and those types of cities, you think, okay, am I buying this because I want it? Yes or no? Or am I buying it because somebody else wants it for me? And then you go, okay, I'm buying this because I want it. Okay, then why do I want it? Do I want it so that other people perceive me differently? Or do I want it because when I was 15, I saw a Porsche and I thought, I want one of those. Those are the coolest things I've ever seen. And for the past 25 years or 10 years or 5 years or however old you are, you've been just dying to get one, and now you can finally afford one. If yes, go ahead, get it, indulge yourself. But chances are things are going to get filtered out somewhere along the way. Sure. When you were a kid, you probably didn't care if your parents had a house with a view of the ocean and a balcony and a pool and a gym in the basement. You probably didn't care.
Yeah.
And so that means you don't really need it. And if you do think you want it, do you want it because you think it'll help you get girls? Because it probably isn't really going to do that. Chances are your own insecurities are kind of invading your rational thought process there. Because, I'll tell you, like, the women that I've dated when I was broke and a student, before I even had my job, were just as good as the women I was dating when I was rolling around in cash and just had the top of the world job and had bragging rights and a law degree that basically came from the golden, chalice of Michigan law, and it didn't make any difference. In fact, it hurt in a lot of ways, because if you lean on that too much, the only kind of girls you get are not the ones you want anyway.
Okay. Yeah. Makes sense. Well, so what is? I know there's no typical day for an entrepreneur, right? But what's your life like?
Well, yeah. I mean, there is no typical day for an entrepreneur, and it's funny because people always go, "What's your day-to-day like?" And I'm like, "Man, I don't even know,"
because I had to hire. There is no day-to-day.
Yeah. Exactly. If there's a such thing as ADD, it's me, right? Okay. So sure. I have an assistant that manages my calendar, and I need it real bad. She's awesome. I'm looking at my calendar today. It looks like I've got a 9 a.m. hike. So I wake up, after watching Game of Thrones way too late last night, wake up, go for a hike, call back a friend that I'd, missed her call the other night, create a presentation about basically what I'm talking about right now for a talk that I have to give tomorrow. I've got a couple of sales calls with some people interested in programs from the Art of Charm to talk to them. I've got an interview with this guy, Jeff Steinman. Should go pretty well. Fingers crossed on that.
I think so. I hear he's really good looking, too.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that, I really don't. My assistant didn't send me any notes. And, another couple calls with people interested in programs from us, work on my presentation again, do some yoga, go for a run, and then I've got a business dinner with two of my best friends, actually, who I happen to be doing business with, about my new show that I'm going to be starting on another network pretty soon. So that's today, but then I look at Saturday, and it's an entirely different thing. And people go, "Oh, you work on weekends, man, that's a bummer." And I kind of think, yeah, but when people ask me how many hours a week I work, I don't even know, because I don't think about it like that. I don't go to work and go to an office at 9 and go, "Oh, only till 5, just got to make it till 5." I never think about that.
Right.
even when I'm like banging my head against the wall trying to get a project done, frustrated to no end, failing repeatedly, I never look at the clock.
Yeah.
It's an entirely different experience than it was on Wall Street, where I was like, oh, it's 11, how much longer are we going to be here? That type of thing. I'm thinking just, is this project going to have ROI for my company? If not, we learned a bunch of stuff about it. So there's a lot of attitude. Like I look at Saturday and I go, okay, I got CrossFit in the morning. I've got another interview, radio show in the afternoon. Guy's probably not as good looking as you.
I'm sure.
I'm sure. And then I got to record my own show and make some commercials for it. I've got to edit an article that somebody wrote about what we do that's going to go on our blog. I've got to study some Korean because I'm learning Korean and Mandarin because I'm a masochist.
Awesome.
I've got to edit a contract with the vendor that I'm actually using my law degree for. Go me. I've got to write our company newsletter, and then I've got dinner with a friend. So it's like, these are my quote-unquote work days, and it's never like go to office, gouge eyes out with sharp stick, which is what I felt like was going on Wall Street.
Yeah. Well, now, are you learning Korean and Mandarin just because you want to?
Yes.
How awesome is that?
I'm learning Korean and Mandarin because I want to, and I go to China. I actually run. This is random, but one of the side gigs that I started to do by accident almost was I go to North Korea regularly as a tourist.
Okay.
And I actually bring Western tourists to North Korea. And so I'm learning Korean because my friends in North Korea can barely speak any English.
Okay.
And I thought, how cool would it be if I could read some stuff, and actually learn how to say a few things in Korean and understand them. And then Mandarin was because I was originally going to start learning Korean only, but I thought if I'm going to learn a hard-ass Asian language, I might as well learn one that has 1.3 billion speakers instead of one that has like 80 million speakers.
There you go.
All right. So I started Chinese, and I love it. And my girlfriend, my recently acquired girlfriend, loves it too because she's actually from Taiwan.
Awesome.
So that's a happy coincidence. But, then I was like, but I still want to learn Korean. I got back from North Korea and started Korean. So now I'm just doing both at the same time because I don't know any better. But I love languages, and I have plenty of time to do these things because I do set my own hours. There's no boss going, well, I shouldn't say there's no boss. I actually hired a CEO and hired an assistant to make sure that I do things.
Oh, okay.
But, there's nobody going, you need to be making calls from 9 to 7 a.m. or 9 to 7 every day.
Yeah.
I can set my own hours. If I don't want to work on Friday, I don't have to. I just move all my calls to Saturday.
Yeah. It's awesome stuff. I want to talk a little bit about the art of charm, right? So
sure.
The first question I want to ask you is when you and your friends started that podcast, did you have any thought in your mind that might be a moneymaker someday?
No.
Excellent.
No.
Okay. So that's kind of what I thought based on the way you described it. Now, so how did you take that from just being kind of a fun hobby project to being a full-on business that's now supporting your life?
Well, basically, we started the podcast thing, and this is not ever going to be a thing, right? And we did it for fun, and we started to see a lot of people go, man, your business model is, brilliant, and you gave away all this free stuff, and now you've got this business. And it's like, we didn't think of it ahead of time. We were doing something that we loved, and that's the key, right? A lot of people go, how do I find a job that I love? It's like, you don't probably. I mean, you can. A lot of people do that. It's tough, though.
Yeah.
What a lot of people want to do who are listening to this show is create a job that they love.
Yeah.
And so we started that podcast. We loved it. We had people going, man, this is so cool. You guys are great. This is life-changing material. And we said, okay, cool. Well, you can donate to us with this PayPal button that we've got on our website. It said buy us a beer.
Oh, okay.
And guys were like, okay, I'll buy you a beer. Here's $100. And I'm like, oh, that's a lot of beer.
Wow.
And then people were going, hey, I'll buy you a beer, but I want to do it in person. And also, if you could help me go out in the afternoon with you guys and help me talk to girls, I would love that. And I'll give you $400. And we were like, well, that sounds pretty good.
Wow.
So we would do that, and we would get like $400. And we're thinking, this is some good cash we're getting here. And then another guy came up to us and said, listen, I want to do some phone coaching with you guys. How much is it? And we were like, I don't know, $50 an hour. I mean, this is 7 years ago. It's a little different now. Said, I don't know, $50 an hour. So he said, cool. I want like 10 hours to start. I'll just give you a retainer. And I thought, okay, this is actually not so bad. I mean, I'm laying on the hammock.
Yeah.
After my bar exam study, going, all right, got a call with Omar on the Skype. You know, this guy from Denmark wants to talk about how to become more social. So, you know, we're doing all kinds of stuff like that. And then one guy, when we moved to New York, goes, I hear you live in New York. I actually live nearby. I'll give you $5,000 and pay your rent for the whole month if you just let me shadow you for this time period.
Wow.
And we were like, wow, that's great. What a win, right?
Yeah.
So we let that happen. And then we started talking about that on the show. And other guys were saying, hey, I'll do that too.
Wow.
I'll do that. I'll come in. And then we said, okay, now we've got like 8 people here for a month. This is awful. Why don't we do something for a week instead and actually have a curriculum and figure out how to teach it? And, you know, so over the years, that's what's evolved into the Art of Charm. People will come in to our quarters here, our teaching facility here in LA. They'll stay here for the week, and they do 60 hours of training. And we train them body language, vocal tonality, eye contact, the way they sit, stand, walk, talk. We have them approach women. We videotape it. We break down the videotape, point out body language and vocal tonality errors. We have female instructors. We do a ton of drills and exercises, teach you persuasion skills, how to deal with difficult people, how to manage relationships. A lot of our clients are married. A lot of them are entrepreneurs. A lot of them are in sales. A lot of them are intelligence agents. A lot of them are college kids. I mean, we get all walks of life in here because charisma is something that's applicable to everybody. But to answer your question, you know, it started as a hobby. We loved it. We started figuring out by accident that we could make money doing it, and boom, now we are. And that's really important because we didn't just look for something we could stand that was profitable or something really profitable that gave us the opportunity to take enough time to not do it. And that's great. I mean, if you hate your job but you only do it 5 hours a week, whatever, keep your job. If it's paying the bills, keep it. You're going to be passionless, but it's better than the other alternative, which is a full-time job that you don't like, that doesn't give you any time and pays the bills. So, but the ideal situation really is something that you're passionate about, that keeps you motivated, that keeps you interested, and also just really, you know, obviously this is rewarding as well because it helps the clients so much as well.
Sure.
But I look at it this way. I work hard, but it doesn't necessarily feel like it all the time.
Yeah.
I love what I'm doing. It's rewarding and it's lucrative. And I can't think of any other combination that's better than that.
Definitely. Well, so is so they come to this facility that you have in LA and go through this week of training. Is there anything else? Do you have any other revenue streams in your business? Do you do any like online training or anything like that?
We do. We have something called the Art of Charm Academy, and it actually comes with your program as well. But you can also buy it as a standalone.
Okay.
And so it's like an online university that goes through some of the basics of what we teach here at the Art of Charm. And we also have a free podcast. It used to be just about picking up girls, but it's not anymore, obviously. But the name stays. It's called Pickup Podcast. We're going to rebrand it soon. But if you search for that on the web or you search for that in iTunes, you'll come up with Pickup Podcast. We interview a lot of entrepreneurs. We interview a lot of life hackers. We also interview a lot of dating coaches and things like that. And people are free to pick and choose. I think there's over 200 hours there right now.
That's awesome. And we'll link all that up below the show.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. No, that's
great.
That's awesome. But well, let me ask you this. So, as you made this transition and as you built this business, what's the biggest mistake that you made?
Oh my gosh! I mean, how can I even quantify that? I mean, it's like it's hard to say. I mean, to be honest, the biggest mistake I think I made, I hired a lot of bad people, and we hired. I mean, I've had people that have stolen content from us, stolen ideas from us, stolen clients from us, stolen resources from us, scammed me out of my money. Flat out stolen my money. You know, there's just been a lot of that. And I think it's because I hired people that I was like, oh, he's excited as I am, instead of going, I need to hire people who know what they're doing. And I know that sounds like really people are going, you idiot, you didn't hire qualified people, you just hired your friends. But it's really hard not to know that when you've never run a business before. Yeah. And a lot of people I know that are very intelligent are like, I'm starting this awesome business and all I'm doing is hiring my friends because they're all these brilliant IT guys. And then a month later, they're like, oh, I just had to fire my buddy. It sucks. He's a bad employee. And I'm thinking, yeah, of course he is. And then I thought, wait a minute, Jordan, you've got no room to judge here. You hired your buddies and they're off running around with your money and your intellectual property all over the place. So that's been that's probably been the mistake that's hurt the most. I would say the biggest mistake that I made was probably not really thinking super clearly about the fact that this was going to be a business moving forward, focusing on what I guess you'd call drivers, where it's like, I haven't done a lot to grow my podcast other than run it, and thankfully the content stands on its own. Okay. But had I busted tail to get onto like large podcast networks and buy advertising on other podcasts and figure out ways to really spread the word about the show over the last 6-7 years, I'd probably be calling you from my freaking private jet right now instead of my office, because that's really been the primary driver. And I just never looked at the data. I was always like, oh, I want to do this now. I want to do that now. And I'm kind of lucky to still be here. And I think it's because I hired a lot of smart people in addition to hiring a lot of dumb people. That went, let's look at this before we spend this amount of money and on that. And then, okay. And then, so there's been people saving me from myself, I think. But there's also just been a lot of like not paying attention to what really, really matters. And luckily we've started to snap out of that. But that's sort of proof that when you're running a business, a lot of what you're doing is seat of your pants. You've got to test things. We didn't do a lot of that in the beginning either. Okay. So it's hard to quantify the single biggest mistake. I would say not valuing our company enough to hire the right people, but hiring people who would work for cheap or liked us. Okay. That was a big mistake, because it ended up costing us a lot more money than just paying the right person a salary in the long run. Another problem, and I'll leave it this last one, I went into business with a bunch of friends, and we all have one vote in a partnership, and that's been a huge mess because as good of friends as you are when you start things, when there's money on the table and everybody thinks they know how to run the show, you're going to run into problems because now you've got 3 guys voting this way and 2 guys voting that way. But the problem is the 3 guys voting this way, they just want more vacation time, or they just want less work, or they want to make more money for their end of the business, and they're screwing you over, and you're thinking this is going to sink the ship in the long run. What you need to do is have 1 or 2 partners at the top, even if it means you have to overpay people or give them smaller equity or give them equity but no vote. Okay. There's ways to structure companies where there's no deadlock, and deadlock has been killer. And a lot of my friends' companies have gone under due to what's called creative differences, and all that means is one person won't get on board with the plan that everybody else has. Okay. And there's a lot of that because unfortunately when you're talking about entrepreneurship and business, there's a lot of ego management that goes into it as well.
Definitely. Oh, that's awesome. Well, Jordan, this has been awesome. But before we get to your website and your contact information, what is the last thing that you would want to leave somebody with who wants to start a business like this for themselves?
If you want to start a business for yourself, I would say instead of looking for ways to make money, look for things that you really enjoy doing, make a huge list, and then figure out how you can monetize that instead of just figuring out ways to get cash in the door. Because I know a lot of people that are fairly successful, and they're doing things they hate doing, and they're doing it because they went, okay, I need to figure out how to pay off all this debt or pay my way through school. So they started a business managing properties or something, and sure, they're doing okay. They're paying for what they need to pay for, but they hate it and it's boring. Yeah. But now they've got all that sunk cost in there. If that same person had gone, what do I like to do? Well, I like to do crochet spare tire covers for minivans. They probably would have been smart enough to figure out a way to make that profitable. And if not, there's no harm in trying 10 to 15 different ideas. Don't be afraid to fail, I guess, is probably even more important. Try a bunch of things out. If they don't work, it doesn't mean you're never going to be successful. It means that idea is not successful. And part of that is mindset, thinking, not going, well, this failed. I suck at this. I'm never going to be able to do this. When people ask me what my biggest failure is, I have to try to remember because I don't think about them for very long. I try to learn the lesson from said failure and then move on. And what ends up happening is I don't feel like I'm a constant string of failures, even though literally my life in everyone's life is a product of constant failure and the results thereof. I think about success because it keeps me motivated, and I learn from failure. So that's really the key, is to make that shift. And it really is what you look at, right? The sum of your thoughts is essentially your reality, as woo-woo as that might sound.
Yeah, no, totally. Awesome advice. Well, Jordan, this has been a blast. Where can folks go to get more information about you and your podcast?
Go to theartofcharm.com. There's a bunch of free stuff there. And the podcast is actually called Pickup Podcast. And you can search for that, or you can go to pickuppodcast.com.
All right. Well, we'll link all that up. And again, thanks for all the great insight and advice that you've given to our listeners. I appreciate it. Had a blast talking with you, and look forward to seeing what you do next.
Yeah. Let's stay in touch. I think you might be a great fit for our audience as well, because everybody asks me, how do I get out of my crappy 9-to-5 and do something like you, Jordan? And I think you're probably better qualified to tell them than me.
That's awesome. That's what I do. Thanks, Jordan.
All right, Jeff.
Thanks for joining us on the How to Quit Working show. Tune in next time when we'll talk to another amazing person just like you, who is now living the ultimate life of freedom and doing it on their terms. If you want to learn how to quit working and get these episodes delivered directly to you, visit howtoquitworkingshow.com.